Our objective in this lesson is to be able to identify and use angle relationships. Complementary angles are two angles whose measures have the sum 90 degrees. Remember that sum means adding. So two complementary angles could be an angle that measures 40 degrees and 50 degrees. This is just an example. Why 40 and 50? Because 40 plus 50 equals 90. And two angle measures that are 40 degrees and 50 degrees add up to 90 degrees. Supplementary angles are two angles whose measures have the sum 180 degrees. Again, we remember that sum means adding. So for example, an angle that's 100 degrees and an angle that's 80 degrees. Why those measures? Because 100 degrees plus 80 degrees equals 180 degrees. Let's take a look at a representation of these types of angles. Let's look at the pair of angles on the top. I'm going to take my protractor and measure these two angles. So I'm going to place the center of the protractor where the horizontal and vertical come together and lining up one side along the 0 degrees. The other side, I know this is an acute angle, so I'm measuring the degrees from 0, 0, 10, 20. Just a little bit past 25, it looks like it's about 28 degrees. So that angle measure is 28 degrees. Let's measure the other angle. So to measure this other angle, I'm going to have to turn it because I need one of the sides to be able to be along the horizontal of the protractor. So here I have 0 degrees, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 62 degrees. So this other angle measures 62 degrees. Now what do you notice about 62 degrees and 28 degrees? 62 plus 28 adds up to 90. So these two angles are complementary. Notice that when we take these two angles and make them adjacent to each other, something interesting happens. I'm going to put these two angles adjacent to each other. So let's make them line up to share a side. And share a vertex. And there we go. Now those complementary angles are adjacent. Let's take our protractor, put it back up here, and notice that together, when the angles are adjacent, they make a 90-degree angle. Remember that about complementary angles. When they're adjacent to each other, they make a 90-degree angle. Let's go back to the notes, and maybe we can draw ourselves a little picture to remind ourselves what we just saw. I'm going to start by making a 90-degree angle and put a ray through that to show that I have two angles that are adjacent, and together they're making that 90-degree angle. Sharing a side. Interesting, right? Let's take a look at the other pair of angles that was in that picture. These two angles. Now, I'm going to start by right away putting them adjacent to each other. Notice what it looks like when they are adjacent to each other. The sides that are not touching form opposite rays, or a straight line. When I take my protractor to measure these angles, I can measure them both at the same time because I can measure the acute angle from this side and the obtuse angle from this side. So from the right at the 0, 10, 20, about 28 degrees. And coming from this side, I start at 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, 130, 140, 152 degrees. Well, notice that 152 plus 28 adds up to 180. These are supplementary angles, and adjacent to each other, the supplementary angles create a straight line, or a total of 180 degrees. Let's show a little picture of that in our notes. So I can start with a straight angle or a straight line and put a ray through it to show that I have one angle adjacent to a second angle. That creates a straight angle of 180 degrees. Interesting. Let's take a look at these examples. The measure of angle 1 equals 52 degrees. What is the measure of its complement? So complement means the other angle that will make the two angles complementary. Therefore, 52 plus some other angle has to equal 90, since complementary means adding up to 90 degrees. So let's get the x by itself. We will subtract 52 from both sides, and we get that x equals 38. So the measure of its complement is 38 degrees. What is the measure of its supplement? So remember that supplementary angles have to add up to 180 degrees. So the angle 52, that measures 52 degrees, plus another angle, its supplement, adds up to 180. So similarly to the last time, we subtract 52 from both sides of the equation. Y equals 128. So the measure of its supplement is 128 degrees. Number 5, angles C and D are supplementary angles. Find the measure of angle C and the measure of angle D. So we remember that supplementary means a sum that equals 180 degrees. So that means when we add these together, it's supposed to make 180 degrees. Since they're already lined up vertically, I'm going to add them vertically. I see my like terms are already lined up. So 7x plus x makes 8x, because that's 1x. Negative 3 plus negative 1 makes negative 4. And the sum is supposed to be 180 degrees. Let's solve this equation. Add 4 to both sides. So we get that 8x equals 184. Divide both sides by 8. And we get that x equals 23. Now, they did not say solve for x. They said find the measure of angle C and the measure of angle D. They're expressed in terms of x. So now we have to take this value of x and plug it back in. The measure of angle C equals 7. Instead of x, we're using 23. So 7 times 23 minus 3 equals 158 degrees. The measure of angle D equals, so again, substituting for x, putting 23 where the x is, minus 1 equals 22 degrees. Here are the measures of angles C and D. We can do a quick check. Does 158 plus 22 add up to 180? Yes, it does. So we have found the correct measures for these supplementary angles. Thanks for watching.